All right, Vice Chair, you can go ahead.
Hello, welcome everybody to the Urban Forestry Board meeting. We are meeting on Monday, July 14th, 3:05, and we'll start with the roll call.
Vice Chair Kohler,
Here,
Board Member Tinsley,
Here.
and Board Member Phelps.
Here.
Vice Chair, we have a quorum.
thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to number 2, approval of the minutes. So we have 2 meetings worth of minutes to go through here. Does anybody have anything to add or mention about the minutes?
Great.
I have a really small item on page 2 of the next law. Under other business.
Mhm.
Kind of in the middle of that paragraph. The Christian commented on approved street trees and classifying the based on, I think that this is them, based on available growing space. One of that is it now. And then I don't know if this really makes sense to do, but on the June 9th, 81, the first review of the board consists in the review for the planning Ponderosa line. So that was the one by City Hall. Correct.
Yes.
And so I think it would be useful for the future to have it say that it was the one that was by City Hall.
I'll make note of that. Thank you.
Under A there.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was the big leaner.
yeah, big right here.
Mhm.
The one across the street is about 2. Yeah. About right at. Okay, what is it called? Is the way. Or what?
Does anybody else have any comments on the minute?
I do not.
Vice Chair, if you could go minute packet by minute packet for approval. Looking for motions.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Monday, May 12th meeting? With the small edit mentioned earlier.
I so move.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion passes.
We have a motion to approve the minutes for the June 9th, 2025. Minutes with the one edit mentioned for number 3 board business.
To include.
To include, just mention that that tree was located by City Hall.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I said.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Vice Chair, the motion passes.
Now, the next. Item is visitor communication.
We do have one in-person visitor communication. The visitor communication noted as item A, written communication McCartney, is included in your packet. And then further visitor communication that was submitted after the packet was created, which should be a separate page at the back of your packet of an email.
That was, from the expert.
Correct.
Okay.
Would you like to review written communication first or in-person visitor communication?
Let's start with the written. Written communication by McCartney. That was Tom, I believe.
Yes, the email included, he requested be submitted for visitor communication along with a summary of a basic tree risk assessment and the tree risk assessment itself from a privately hired arborist.
Right. Well, finding his email, but I did read it
Yeah. Private things, built in, yeah,
and,
private things, yeah.
Should be just after the minutes.
the, assessment summary that's referred to. By timber stand improvements. Oh, here it is in the back. Sorry about this, that is surprising. So because this is coordinated with the discussion about a certain tree, can we like revisit it at that time?
Yes, we can come back to that when we come to the discussion for that tree.
And go with. Dixie, we can wrap that into the live conversation about that. So then we're ready for, if you have to come on.
Can I just pull up the chair? Yeah.
Please state your name.
Yeah, my name is-
and address.
Paul Bennett, and the address is 159 North Grove Street, just down the street.
Okay.
Well, I'm here just for two reasons. One, I just got a note from our insurance company, the Hartford, talking about what we need to do to, protect our house from fire. And it's a little vague, and so I came over here and found out that you were having this meeting. So I was hoping that I might have some of my questions answered. But some of these, one of them was like trimming of trees. Is there a difference between trimming a pine tree as opposed to trimming a Christmas tree type? We for years we bought live Christmas trees and always then planted them in the backyard. And we could get into the ground deep enough to plant it. And so we have several of those trees now, the blue spruce, in our backyard that have gotten quite tall. So, and we've heard different things about when, or that you shouldn't trim blue spruce trees from up 6 feet from the ground out. That is not helpful for the tree. Now I don't know. We hear different things. So again, this idea of a standard is, I think that's what's kind of confusing, because I think what the insurance company said are things that are, there's no mention in here about clearing things 5 feet from your house. They say up to 30 feet to the property line of your home or other structure, and to keep clear. And it's like, that's everything that's everything around our house.
It's like your lot.
Yeah. And then we're surrounded by city trees and a house that's a barn behind us that's all made of wood. And so, it's kind of like, we might spend $20,000 trimming these all up, but the danger is everything is ground. So everything's all the trees that are around our house that aren't ours,
Right.
and the homes that are around us. So I guess and I'm sure I'm not feeling confused about all this, and it's just, I think clarity for quite some time, articles in the Nugget are very helpful as far as what kind of trees should need to be trimmed, and what you need to be careful with, what what season, when is best to trim a tree. And just, all the way down the street, and it's all the city trees all the way down the street. And then of course, in timber trees, all the houses are surrounded by trees. So, it seems a little, is this really going to be helpful to do all this work on our house when there's so much flammable material all around the place? And we want to. The city of Sisters has burned twice before in the 20s. So we know that's historically a reality. So we want to protect ourselves. But I think there's just a general knowledge packet or information that I think the Nugget is a good source of giving that information out to people that feel like they can't hire an arborist or they don't know where to go to or who to talk to, but there's some confusion that I'm feeling. And like what insurance companies, I mean, I'm basically feeling the heart that's not going to go by what they say here. So it's just like what companies are other people recommending would cover and call people that have their homes in the city, of course, but a free city. So, where do you balance all of that out? Anyway, it's just this is rather impromptu on my part, but I thought since you were having this meeting that I attended this for a while here. See whatever. Now, I hope you're in an air conditioned car, because you're out there and so you're sitting in your car. But it's a hot day out there. But yeah, fires.
Especially outside now.
Good. That's what I'm saying.
Well, we appreciate your coming in, and we have talked amongst this group before, about the need for more public information about tree trimming, tree planting, considerations when you're both thinking about the area right around your own property, but also your neighbors and city. So all the points. I'm curious, what makes you think that they're going to take away insurance?
Well, this, defensible space, the new branches that touch and hang over the roof, and then up to 30 feet are to the property line of your home or other structure. What does that mean?
Where are you reading that from? If I may ask.
From the Hartford.
Oh, from the Hartford itself.
But it's
letter.
Does
They
that
said-
mean 30 feet high or 30 feet out, up to 30 feet or to the property line of your home? I guess that means out, from yours, which
wall of your house.
yeah. And that includes all of our lawn. And all of our trees.
So it's unclear from what you say whether or not they're just talking about living up or removing all vegetation. Can you tell by the wording?
I can't, and then it says, within each, no trees need to be, 10, 12 feet apart, you can't have trees that next to one another. So we have to remove several right away if we follow that, if we want to stay with this company. I think just starting, it's just, up or 6 feet or so or something. Fine, that is the blue spruce, we have to think differently about a blue spruce. There's such a variety of trees, there's a big variety of pine trees. So.
I have a blacksmith too, and the fire department came out and did a walkthrough and pointed out all these issues, cracks in your deck that the ashes and cinders can blow in, but they wanted that black spruce trimmed up at least 6 feet. The thing is, you trim up 6 feet and let it still hang down another 2 feet, and I probably will have to limit them up again, but they don't want that low embers that go along the surface. Those are ladder fuels, and I think if you make an effort to bring them up part of it.
I think when you're reading through that, I'm recognizing not those bullet points there, reference the FDA standards there. And I think what they've done is they've done a poor job of paraphrasing the FDA standards in there, because they're an insurance company and they do trees and fire, mitigation. So I would reference that standard. It makes me think when I read that they want treatment of those trees up to 30 feet from, from their home. They say property line there, but if you're looking at those standards, you find that there's trees within 30 feet of your home should be raised out to 6 feet. Rather than removing them all, but I think maybe their wording is just kind of cool because it doesn't match that wording doesn't match the actual standard that if you look closer to it. So
Yeah,
that would be my first thought.
Hey, when you're talking to the mic.
Yeah, sorry, I shared mine.
and there's nothing there about, clearing shrubs from, even a 5 foot ground around your house, there's a heard several times, and that makes sense, you know, putting stone up there or something. There's nothing there about that. So again, there's not a standard, and it's confusing, and I know I won't be the only one about this, and I'm sure we all want to do our share of it. If we're in, even have fire here, when we read about these terrible things that happen everywhere.
Vice Chair, if I could, I'd like to give a city council perspective on this question, if that's absolutely. We just recently passed our principal state standard to the city council level for all new construction. It doesn't apply to you, but we're going to be working on the existing standards or standards for existing homes over the next year. But if you follow the standards for new homes, which is similar to what they are saying, 0 to 5, no trees, and then 5 to 30 only have trees that are on the non-prohibited plant list that we also passed with the code just a month ago. You would be able to point to the code and basically take your case that you're doing it to, you're going to be following the standards of code for new construction in your existing construction. And I think you could make the case that you're doing everything you can to make your space as defensible as possible, your property. The standards that we passed last month as a city are the toughest defensible standards in the state. We based some of it off of Ashland's new code that they've done since they had a big fire about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it's going to be used, I believe, widely as a starting point for other cities like ours that are near the forest or in the forest down the road. And if you as a homeowner wanted to examine that new code, it is on the city website. And if you followed that code, I think you'd be well on your way to establishing a high enough standard that I would be surprised, to be honest with you, if the Hartford will give you too much grief about it unless they have a company-wide policy. They're going to make it hard on you anyway. You know, if they have, if an insurance company wants to not renew you, they can find ways to not renew you. And unfortunately, that's just been the case with some companies, and I'm not sure about what that. But if you wanted to work with city code and at least examine it, see how it might apply to you, I think the blue spruces outside of 30 feet are okay. But within 30 feet, those things do, when they catch on fire, you've seen Christmas trees on fire, right? So you know that they're pretty bad. I highly recommend having the fire department come over. It does not cost any money, and they will give you some free advice.
They write a report for you also.
Yeah, they put it in writing.
Yeah, put it in writing,
So I think that there's a few avenues you can use, but I totally agree with you. I think that the standard is so new, and our situation with the insurance companies is also kind of new. We're still learning how to deal with it. I think there's some information that the city can do maybe a little better on, especially from the council level. We make a lot of decisions at the council level, and then we just move on to the next thing. And it's sometimes, it appears to be willy-nilly, but the fact is, we thought about it for months and months and months to get there, and we have a backlog of things to do, just like staff does. But I think you're right. I think we can do something a little better to guide the public in an informative way to articles or a newsletter or whatever, something on the website. Here's what you can do now. You don't have to wait till we make new standards for existing properties. If you wanted to follow the new standards, you can. It's up to you. And the new standards are very, very valid because all new construction is going to follow that from now on. And that means anywhere within the city, whether it's future UG expansion or not. So I hope that helps you.
Thank you very much. No, that's very helpful. I appreciate it.
And if you have further concerns, the city council would love to hear you too. And I know you're not scared to come up and meet with us. Thank you again for all your hard work on the dark skies. And you were part of that. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Before we go any further, we were in the middle of introductions when we started the meeting.
We can pick back up with that.
Yep.
Sure.
So, Avery.
Oh. We're Christian and Tim Forestry.
And Bridget, you wanted to say your name?
Bridget Tinsley.
Where are you exactly?
Not sure. I'm north of Olympia in a small town that doesn't have a playground for this little person. So I was led to the Public Works Department and I'm sitting in a strip of lawn on the side of their parking lot.
Well, that's pretty.
Not every town is sisters. As we all know.
That's right.
So we have our new project coordinator, Casey White. You want to go ahead and introduce
Hey
yourself?
everybody, Casey White. I'm the new Public Works Project Coordinator. Day one on the job.
Day one.
Welcome.
And Jackson Dumanch, Operations Manager.
And so in the future, are you going to still be at these meetings or are you gonna be gone?
I will still be at these meetings.
Okay. Thank you for there. All right, let's go on to the large for business, large hunters of time with their type. Their top and see right away between 451 and 507 South Locust Street.
I did include a brief staff report summarizing timeline of events and inspections that occurred, as well as noting the 3 attachments, 2 from Avery and 1 from our arborist at Arbor 1.
Andrew, would you like to present your report verbally?
Yeah, would you like me to start there with my report, or do I go through the? I find it with this scenario, maybe it'd be helpful to walk through it in a timeline fashion, because it might explain. Some of the strategies that I noticed, if that's okay with you. Sure. Okay. So, with the email here at the beginning from Tom Card. We discussed is the arborist opinion for tree and okay, he has the second report in here. Or his own report that he from his private office, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that is interesting in there that it described, let's see, at a certain point. And I think there might have been a miscommunication, but. So it says city forestry's inspection of 6/17/25 found no serious concern. And that's kind of reflects with the timeline. In that I didn't provide a report at 6/17. And I wonder where that information came from, but it helped me to understand that it's possible that Tom McCartney was under the impression that the city was not interested in doing anything with its truth. And that may help to explain the scope of work that he asked Timberstein Improvement to do, because he has a tree that he's concerned about that seems to be no concern to the city, so they may have understood that this tree is a concern. So does that help? I mean, put things into perspective, because I think that helps kind of describe some of the differences in the reporting. Right.
So to clarify on that, after you did an initial inspection or a visual before we received the report, I did pass along some information to Tom McCartney, stating that we would continue to look at it, but we didn't have any immediate concerns, but that we were still getting a second opinion and a full written report.
So you looked at the tree when? Because your report is dated 6/23. When did you remember when you were out there?
Right, that would have been the day that I actually visited and did full inspections of the tree. However, Jackson did mention to me that there was some concern about this tree from the neighboring property, and that if I could, as soon as possible, just have a look at it. So I went ahead and drove by one day when I just had a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I had a quick inspection of the tree to determine basically, does it look like it's at risk of imminent failure? Is this something that we need to deal with now before the next sort of forestry work?
Right.
And at that time, I determined that I felt like we could wait to this meeting to discuss this and to have it come before the board rather than taking action immediately, which you may want to, in certain cases. In this case, and I think thus far it's held to be true that we were okay with it.
Okay. And so then you drove by prior to June 23rd, then you did go on June 23rd.
Correct.
And write up this report.
Correct. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of clarify that
Okay.
because I think it helps tell the story. So.
Right, and then, so Mr. McCartney's email was sent on July 2nd, so in between there was another city hired arborist who went out.
Our contracted arborist, Arbor One.
So, then the homeowner who was concerned about this asked his arborist, Nate Goodwin, to do yet another. So there's been three.
Yeah, we're reported. And so I'll start with my report, my first report here, and we can kind of go through this and chat about it, and we can move on to some of the other stuff. So this is the typical report I put together, just like other months. It's a large tree, about 50-inch diameter. And it's a little debatable on the light ground ratio there, depending on which side you're looking at, standing up front. It appears that a lot more of the tree is dead, however, there's some long down trending branches that kind of cover up a big portion of the canopy, so it's a little debatable. I put 70% live and 30% dead, 60%.
We're the expert.
Right. And I think that's important for this discussion to realize that why we're here is not necessarily to go through, in this case, compare all these reports and dispute any of the discrepancies, but rather what steps would we like to take to ensure. Yeah, there's a little bit of gray bound sapra in the dead top, and there's significant stringy sap coming out of the top. I actually climbed this tree and inspected it and found that there were galleries under the bark that looked like to be Nip's beetle, which makes sense because the beetle is not because the top.
How up is that? Was that all looking pretty or up
Towards the top? Yeah, but those Ips beetles can attack branches, I believe, 6 inches in diameter or less. That's typically what they look for. Then have to check exactly where there's negative inches.
That's why it's the top of the tree is vulnerable, because that's the smaller.
That's where the beetle can attack. Yeah, the bigger, thicker bark, those beetles can't actually make their way through. Yeah, what they can make their way.
I'm learning stuff, so I just,
Yeah.
sorry, it's done.
No, that's fine. I think it's great. And of course, this tree is adjacent to a home at 507 South Locust. And it does have a slight corrected lean, so I say corrected in that the tree leaned at one time and it has a little bit of a bow to the trunk. So over time it has righted that lean and continues to grow straight at this point for many years has grown straight out. So the tree is not doing naturally. But it does have a little bit of weight more toward the 507. That's definitely a big point here. And there have been some grade changes within about 25 feet of the trunk of this tree at the adjacent property. And so that has impacted the roots, I'm sure, a little bit. It's difficult to tell exactly how much occurred and what impact that might have. At the same time, the consideration that there has been significant development towards the north there along this road tree, the whole row there along the creek. And that now lack of vegetation on the north side because homes have gone in does create a situation where that tree has grown up with protection from the north, which is where we get a lot of our strong winds, that it no longer has. There's also been damage to the root system on the north side, which is where we get strong winds. So we're to consider that as well. This tree is not the only one that seems to have some indication of Ips beetles. The other trees unconfirmed, but possibly have that same thing going on right in the center of it. It's probably within about 10 to 12 feet. It's so close. It's pretty close.
So it's got a pretty good water source
It
there.
has a very good water source.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's probably why it's gotten so big. The bark plates aren't very far separated, and you get we talked about before. Like the bark of the tree, but in this case, they're not very far separated, the tree's very big, so it's. A lot of growth. Yeah, so definitely a concern there, if this tree was to fail, that it could impact the home if I was to focus. However, when I inspected the roots of the tree, the trunk, it sounded it, climbed the tree, I didn't find anything to me that stood out to make me think that there's weakness in the root system or the trunk that would cause whole tree failure. Of course, the top is dead, there are dead branches, and those are pretty likely to fail. At some point, probably not right away, the needles are still on them, it's probably less than a year that's next to die. So there's a little bit of time in mind. So my recommendation at that time, with the information I had, was that we remove the dead top and continue to monitor the tree. In that the expense of removing the entire tree is significant, and that there's potential there to retain a valuable wildlife tree along the river, with homeowners adjacent to the tree on the north side express how much they value the tree when they're there, and how much they would like to avoid significant impacts to that area of the tree that they've been stewarding. If that makes sense. So as you remove the tree, a lot of damage can occur to somebody's property, to the riparian forest, so we're concerned about that. And I took some of those things into mind and thought, well, I think it would be possible to remove the dead portion, which would reduce overall load on the tree in high winds, and the surface area of the tree to be leveraged against, and would thus reduce the risk.
The chance of the top set.
Yeah, it would be gone. Now it would reduce the risk that the tree poses,
Right.
and we would continue to monitor over time. Was my recommendation.
So those trees, those limbs will come up and make 2 or 3 tops or something.
It could. It
won't look
yeah.
as pretty.
It's possible. It's all so.
Yeah.
There's multiple possibilities there, and that's why I say we have to monitor. We could remove that top, and we might notice the tree continues to decline and has to be removed. We could remove the top, and the tree may recover and continue to live for a long time.
They seal the top once you cut it off with anything that prevent
Oh, no.
infestation.
No, not in this case.
If you go to fruit trees, things like, yeah.
Yeah, there are some. Most of the time, we don't work at the time.
Old school.
Yeah. It's cool. So, did you all have any questions about my report there? That initial report?
No, your report was very clear,
Okay, and you,
and good to hear that you actually climbed a tree.
yeah, I did, and I did that because I thought it looked like a beautiful tree. So I spent the time to do that. At the same time, I went ahead and now, because there was a conversation about the risk this tree posed, I had a discussion with Jackson and said, it would be interesting to me, maybe I could submit a tree risk assessment in this case, not thinking that at all that I would make a tree risk assessment that was in opposition to someone else's tree risk assessment, which would have been impactful. The intention was to have a better understanding, take a little bit of a deeper look at this because there is so much concern about the tree, and then share that information with you all, and to help you also understand that this is a potential report that we could request in the future if there's other trees.
Right.
So mostly it was a point of discussion and a little bit more in depth look at the tree. The findings are pretty much the same. It's just that if you want to look in detail and you have questions about what I evaluated and why, it would be written down a little bit. And then we have this whole matrix we go through to evaluate the risk that it poses. How we. So, if you have any questions about that, or we've got to talk about this.
And so it in great contrast, the tree risk assessment form that was assessed by David Goodwin, who was hired by Tom McCartney. You read page 202. Its final data is advanced assessment needed, no, why, the reason, tree is in decline and largely dead. And, other wording went throughout this report. Not pretty dire, kind of pretty pine top died rapidly, extremely in a matter of 12 to 24 months before all foliage just turned yellow.
Right, and
etc.
a lot of the things in there, I wouldn't dispute, I think that they actually, if you look closely at the reports, however, the difference is the language. My language is fairly objective, and they use a lot of strong language in this report, I think because the intent was to draw attention to the risk, which, fair enough, I think, and if they were under the impression that maybe the city would not consider that as true, through maybe just a miscommunication, that may help me understand why they decided to use such strong language, but if you look at the details of the reports. The only significant finding that I noticed that difference is that Nate sounds like Nate government and he did some soil probing. So he took a metal rod, poked it in the ground along the south side of the tree, and that he reports that that rod went into the ground. And that indicates to him that the roots are compromised and don't have enough structure to resist working with that rock. But I think that's a rather inconclusive measurement with the size.
They didn't rock and molded right like a creek.
Yeah, maybe there's more detail that he didn't provide.
Okay.
He also said that he did it on the south side, which would be what I would call the compression side of the root system. So not really the part of the root system that I would be concerned about. Is there a tree falling to the south? You're concerned about the north side of the root system holding the tension. That makes sense. So the soil's fairly loose and deep there along the creek. That's to me one of the significant differences in our reports. When you exclude the matrix there. The other thing is that he describes the potential for failure as imminent, which again, I don't think it's important to break them down, but I brought description, all these terms are defined and I can read you the description of imminent. This failure has started or is most likely to occur in the near future, even if there is no significant wind or increased load. This is an infrequent occurrence for a risk assessor to encounter and may require immediate action to protect people from harm. So that's what imminent means in the reporting. And I personally feel like that's a little bit stout to say this transit. Sure, imminent failure. However, like I said, when you understand, maybe they were thinking that there was not going to be action.
Maybe it's caution. But yeah, on the side of caution, I don't want to say the street method.
So you're kind of thinking that, and you believe that they were thinking that we might not do anything about it, and so they're like, hey, do something about this. And that they might not have thought that you, without having your report, they didn't know you even would consider just copying the tree and leaving it and reassessing it in the future date. Is that fair to say?
I think that's a possibility. That's all.
That's all.
But that's what makes me think, because they use a lot of strong language in here about the negligence and the legal responsibility of the city, which I'm not a lawyer.
Maybe that way you put it in there just to protect your rear.
And somebody who's saying, I want you to listen to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Basically, and of course, and understand that there is severe risk potential for the street. If that tree was to fail entirely, there would be very severe consequences for that. So it's definitely worth
No, it
acknowledging.
wasn't like the one across the street, that
Sure.
dead was
Completely.
right there, that they were dead, yeah, and they were one of our shooting too, actually. We did some trimming and removing trees about 7 years ago. One of the trees they said was gonna die within the next 2 years, it's the biggest pine cone. It's doing well, but I like his work and I appreciate what he did, but I just sometimes he was just, we need to take that out, and I was ready to do that at that time, so.
This was on your own.
On my own property, yeah, like.
Yeah.
2 states.
Excuse me, board members, Bridget has raised her hand online.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious if that topping the tree, how much of the top would need to be removed to effectively manage the dead top and like maybe protect against some of the susceptibility to beetles. But could it also as well like eliminate, I don't know about eliminate, but remove that imminent hazard for the target, which is the property in question?
Yeah, and I think that's where we're gonna get into kind of the meat of what we should probably talk about, is the reports, and then also, what we would like to, how we'd like to treat this tree and mitigate for the risk of those folks. So, one thing to consider is if we remove the top, there's a possibility that the hip beetle continues to attack the tree, and that by removing the top, we don't completely remove all of the insects from the tree.
Well, they're everywhere.
Correct.
They're around.
Yeah, so the managing the beetle population through your goal of trees isn't the best way to manage the population. So I was just speaking with the entomologist last Friday. What do you want to do to manage the beetle population is maintain an healthy state. So at the same time, you want to manage slash when trees are pruned to get rid of it before the beetles can utilize it for reproduction. But in this case, like I mentioned, it's possible there are other trees directly adjacent to it that also have a mosquito. My feeling was that it would be making that effort to remove the top would be a pretty good effort.
Protect the other trees around.
Somewhat, yeah, protect the other trees.
And then
But it's definitely worth considering
Yeah.
whether or not that maybe removing the entire tree would help to mitigate that even further.
And then with, okay, so like you're looking at it and it's mostly brown, let's say for,
It's just a different standard, so.
do you, then take another 6 inches, 12 inches, like how do you prophylactically prune it down a little bit further?
Yeah, well, I think you could, when you're evaluating how much to take. Consider the distance the tree is from the home of concern, 507. I measured that on site to be about 75 feet. From the base of the tree to the owner's back porch, basically, which is kind of the closest portion of the tree. So if we were to bring the height of the tree down to below 75 feet, effectively the risk to his property would be minimized from that. Buck Run Park, however, the tree was to topple in that direction under the right circumstances, not to say that it will. But the removal of that much trunk would definitely reduce the signature film. So there's an option to remove that. And then if you're concerned about the remaining insects in the tree, you might remove any of those branches that were within that size range I mentioned. I think it's less than 6. I have to look closely, but you could remove those branches as well if you thought they might be part of those small branches. They might be part of it.
And there's a few, I looked this tree very closely from the tree. So there's also some branches that kind of hang down. that are
Yeah.
Sad. So would you suggest removing those? They look like they're dead or partly dead.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Kind of, them out?
Yeah, and ultimately, I think there's it's 50-50, I think, in my mind. There's some potential that the tree survives, and the folks that I've discussed this around Central Oregon longer than 85. Yeah, I might be worth a shot. Especially considering the cost that it is to remove a 15-inch diameter pine trunk and all that little way. There's a lot of effort involved. And the habitat value the tree will continue to provide along the creek even dead.
Right. And when you look there, like I saw this property before they put a house there, there were other large
Yes.
trees on the Rosa Juniper. Sad, to see them gone. Just air above this construction. So this tree is one of the last remaining, old, it's not original growth tree, but it's a big tree for that area. So, I agree with Dixie's perspective, it would be a shame to take it all the way down, and also the people who just bought that lot, or whatever they bought, they just are building this house. They will lose a big. Beautiful tree to look at and to provide privacy and habitat for the deer and. Yeah, so all of those things and. Lean my view toward topping and thinning. And then trying to see how that evolves over time, what does it look like in another. 6-12 months. And also to the point about the soil, on the creek side, there's a lot of riprap there. At some point, the city came in and dumped wherever they got it from, some concrete trash, or, to stabilize that thing. How far down it goes is at the base of that tree, I don't know. But that may be why we did a soil probe. It felt more loose than it would have on the other side. And being right next to the tree. Yes. The only thing, I have a question.
I don't know what that hand is.
Bridget, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna say as well that reducing the height of the tree will, I think, help with some of that wind loading concern as well. And I mean, never say never. I'm not the forester, but it's that like a tree of this size, especially with that water source, I think we would see either a pretty rapid decline within the year of it continuing to decline with or without any treatment, but the treatment would reduce, I think, a lot of the risk and show, that concerted balance between maintaining and prioritizing our older trees and taking the concern of citizens, and obviously targets such as homes and sidewalks, those pretty critical concerns. I think it's a really good balance to remove that top and reduce that risk considerably. And I think we would see within a year, if we're going to have any sort of chance at seeing the tree pull through, or if it will just continue. So I like Avery's report a lot always, and can appreciate the perspective of maybe why the Arbor One had some really heavy language there. So I think the thoughtful way to manage the risk helps kind of address both reports and the interest of the city, the right of way, and the property owners.
Thank you.
These are the ones you're talking about, these are the ones down here. Because this is the dead stuff.
Yeah,
And that
it's even hard to keep there, but if you stand like right underneath
Right.
it, just very common with older.
right, and I think that's it, those old trees with
They
their
do that.
weight, those old limbs, you get into, correct me if I'm wrong, but then they begin to sag down there and they get less growth going out on the end, and so that's kind of just a natural maturation of a tree, and I don't know if those can be attacked more easily by beetles, but yeah, I just saw these, when you mentioned that, I was wondering if that's what you're talking about, it's not what's like the top that's up there, kind of
Sorry,
I'm late.
Okay. We're talking about a city by the creek.
Across.
Yeah, across from Buck Run. Yeah. You know about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? If you vote to crown and trim it up and try and maintain the tree for a while and see if it kind of pops back. If it doesn't pop back, is there a case to be made to use the log itself or what's left of the trunk and have it horizontal along the bank, so itself could be something that helps protect the edge of the bank, instead of actually having to haul it out, which is, a costly thing. Is it possible that the trunk itself could just be like pushed over down the creek, right on the bank, and maybe that by itself would be a use for the tree that's taken out completely
Support the bank.
to support the bank? I don't know.
It could be like.
I'm just asking because it would be really nice to kind of have a secondary plan of, hey, here's one way we can reduce costs and also help the repairing area of the bank by just knocking it down, have it be along the bank, or even, and sorry if this is a really bad idea, across the creek, so there's this nice looking thing. I don't know. I'm just asking that I don't need an answer right now, but if it helps down the road, if they have to take it out, at least you can use the actual trunk itself for a good purpose. And I don't know if that's the case.
So bank stabilization projects that we've been involved with, anytime they use structure like that to support the bank, you're excavating back into the bank,
Oh,
you're tying it back in, you're using cables, dead man's, usually more than one log.
okay, so it's not just a log itself.
No, because
Never.
what you don't want that log to do is to catch high water and go and pin itself directly across
Gotcha.
the creek. And you got 3 bridges downstream that you also have to think about. And it's a 50-inch
Yes, huge.
tree. Yeah.
And you don't want to go down and smash the bridges or.
No,
Something like that.
no. Or forcing water where it shouldn't go.
Okay,
Yeah.
great answer. Thank you, Paul. It was a good try. I was trying to think of
I was just thinking of, you go to the redwood forest and here's these big logs laying there, they kind of add to we don't have them, we take them out, we cut them up, saw them up. And all we have is standing timber, we don't have these big, and I don't know legally or if it's a hazard, the kid falls off the log or.
That's pretty helpful though.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
it is.
So thank you. I'm done.
We can reach out to Upper Deschutes Watershed, who does those type of projects, and see if they got a place for that tree.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it ever came to me one. Like, sections and both for because of the houses and the.
I actually have some information on that. Because of the developing lot on the north side of this tree, they will be installing their driveway and landscaping in the near future. And I spoke with Arbor One, our arborist, on strategies for removal or topping. They said that if we top it, it would involve minimal equipment. And he suggested, I think he noted in his report, waiting until the fall after the mating season for the beetles. But if we had to do a full removal, it would require a lot more equipment, and that would have to happen ASAP within probably the next 2 weeks in order to go ahead of the developer.
In order to minimize interference with.
Yes, whatever they put in, we would have a severe impact on.
Hey, do you have a perspective on the timing if we top it?
Yeah, well, it brings a couple of things in mind, and that as the city, you want to be good neighbors to people, and I think if this neighbor, at 507, is losing a lot of sleep over this, which is understandable to me, right? If it's one thing to say in this room, well, I don't think it's a big concern, but it's another thing to sleep under the tree, right? And that comes to mind for me, where I would say, yeah, I still would stand by. I think the tree poses a risk, however limited. But if that person living there feels so uncomfortable, I would think it might be a good thing to do as a neighbor to say, well, let's mitigate this situation so that you can address it. I can understand. Which makes me wonder about the timing. That makes it a little bit tricky to decide. Is what's best for the tree and what's best for the community may be a little bit at odds in the situation. Yeah, so that's.
But you want the sap to still be coming up, at this time of year, I think the sap is still rising.
Yeah, and it's so hot right now. And this would be, taking it off like that's a harsh thing to do to a tree. It's a little bit outside of normal tree pruning standards, but this kind of unique situation. Same time, so. Yeah, that's a little tricky. I'm open to discussion. I think that's the things that come to mind. As far as the insects and their movement, I think it's best to avoid transferring, moving, making slashes time of year. However, a lot of that wood is dead, and so there probably aren't beetles still in there, if that makes sense. So they inhabit the wood and they hatch and fly away. The fungus that they transmit into the wood towards the branches, I believe. So that they're probably no longer present in that wood, but there are some. So if we make slashing, seems possible. But it would be better for the help of the tree to wait till it's a little cooler.
Yeah.
Heat of the sun to make a cut like that and all the transpiration.
And when is the driveway scheduled to go in and all that?
I believe within the next, so in a couple weeks, I think
Oh.
2 to 3 weeks is when the driveway is going in, landscaping in the fall. But like I said, if we just removed the top, our arborist believes that we can get in there without disturbing too much of the landscaping and of the property itself. But full removal would need to happen prior to any further work on that property.
So. Conundrum there.
So I can say this too, to add just a little bit more. I think when we're looking at the tree overall, and we're considering its health. There is a significant likelihood that the tree doesn't recover. There's some potential for it, but if we also have the neighboring property to consider. So if we went ahead and pruned maybe a little more harsh than we would want to, take a little bit bigger top, remove a little bit more wood. You know, it's pushing harder on the tree, but providing some comfort to that neighboring home that said, well, we went ahead and took it down to 7. So now your property is no longer. The tree took a little bit of a heavier hit than you would have liked to, and maybe not the right time of year, but it's possible the tree climbs anyways, even if we do a lighter touch. I can see that.
But even that's still 3 months down the road.
We could do it right away. There's
It's just harsher on the tree.
harsher on the
Right,
road.
if you are trying to tree that may be on its way out anyway.
Think you wanna get it for the fall when you start coming up, you know. Time I lived here, what's that was Halloween storms, I don't know if you remember that. And so this year, last year, we didn't have winter. We get some pretty good storms in the fall.
I'm glad I don't have a boat.
Have you heard from the property owners that are building a new place?
I've been in communication with them.
And what is their perspective?
They have not provided any input on the tree.
So it seems like we could make a motion to proceed now to top the tree. We could decide how much to top it. I think 70 feet. It's very.
Yeah, it would be worth to
Right.
make that actual measurement, maybe on site when you're doing the work. To go ahead and measure the height that they're at and then measure the correct distance across to that. It would be helpful because I use the laser range finder from, crouching through the bushes and stuff. But that's
Yeah.
my rough estimate.
Mhm. And so there's how much to top and the timing. If we can do it. We can get on the arborist schedule to do it right away, then we would have to be done. Is it like a 1-day job?
I leave that to them, hard for me to say.
Okay.
That's their.
Another approach would be. Take the tree completely down. And that would need to be done immediately if we wanted to be considerate of the property owners. The adjacent property owners' new driveway going in. Which, as I say that out loud, I think, well, this is all very interesting timing. Because it feels like a time pressure is being put on us that is very short. committed. And then I thought of another perspective, which is because the tone of the email and the very negative language on the tree risk assessment by the person who was hired by Tom McCartney. You know, should we ask for an opinion from our legal counsel if they want to weigh in, like in any way on this? Or Paul, do you have you've probably lived through a lot of different scenarios with homeowners. Is there anything that we should be considering in that arena at this point?
We could definitely ask. I mean, it's always good to be safe on the legality and the things, but everything that we've gotten from them as act of God is just that. You can't control wind, you can't control
Right.
buds, you know, those type of things. But still, I would lean on them to answer that question. And we could get a pretty quick turnaround on that.
Okay, so one way we could do the motion is we'd like to see the tree topped to height that is safe if the tree does fall over, or we could just say cut off the deck. That would be a lesser amount. And before that happens, we would like the city to run it by legal, just because of the tone of the correspondence here.
If we're gonna make the
value of the tree. Sorry.
if we're gonna make the effort to run it through legal, would it be worthwhile to kind of prepare a statement of our response to check the legality of, like, does it eliminate the liability, saying, you know, this is a good faith effort response to address, you know, risk to property owner, tree health, so on and so forth. And, you know, barring an act of God, we believe that this is a prudent response. Or, you know, would that be worthwhile? That's, I guess, another Paul question.
Worthwhile to what specifically state that in our motion?
Yeah, that, you know, essentially consolidating this conversation, which is like, we have this arborist report that's, you know, pretty specific in language, and we want to respond to it and not you know, embroil any sort of liability there. And so is this an adequate, is the language of our consideration and response, and then the preceding actions, you know, does that help? Is that keep us safe?
Yeah. City or it appease the landowner.
In our, you know, tree risk assessment language, they thought, would we have met our duty of care? So we had a certain amount of duty of care to provide for the tree.
Which we also
It would be fascinating to hear from me, but I don't know what necessarily. You know, pick on.
No, and I think legal will provide a response that we could share with concerned people. Yeah, and let them craft that. You know, the one thing with legal is they are pretty conservative. So it's a very real possibility that they could say it's in the best interest of the city to remove this tree.
East, west,
Oh, and I totally
I
understand.
understand what you're saying, and you know, on the creek there and that tree, you know, the top sky, it's still a viable part of that. The stream bank and the shade for the water and people there.
However, to Avery's point, if we said, let's assess approximately where we should head it down to, so that even if it did fall, in the most perfect way directly toward their house. It wouldn't touch their house for nothing but a few like inches, and then, of course, we have covered our duty of care, I would think.
I would remind you, there are two targets and one is the yard, but at the same time, it seems like. Except for fully removing the tree, you'll never be able to. Remove that target from.
Well, I think in the yard, it's with the angle that it's at, I think that corner of their porch there in the backyard is probably the closest point, it seemed like to me, but I haven't fully evaluated the property. It seemed like to me, check it out, 75 feet. With that distance, but
I think if we used some length, it was a little generic and, safe distance. Determined by arborist or whatever, I think it's a.
So they remove the top and literally, that would protect the house against the tree. Was true.
Plus 5 feet, you know.
Yeah, something like that.
I think that's a. And I'm not a voting member, but I think that's the language you're looking for, that's pretty close.
Okay. So does someone, thank you, Michael. Someone want to make a motion that we would like to,
You and me, huh?
Bridget or Robert, would like to take down the top of the tree
Yeah.
only. And to produce result as a safe distance from the neighbor's house, from Mr. Hartney's house, should the tree fall over. And prior to doing that, run this plan by our legal counsel to make sure that we're meeting our duty of care both to the community and to our urban trees.
I so make that motion.
Does somebody need to say it like that specifically again, or you want me to be the one to make the motion?
Okay.
Bridget, you want to make the motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to remove the top of the tree at a height to be determined later, but one that adequately removes the target risk if the tree were to fail. To remove the risk from the house of the property owner, and also to run the language through our legal counsel in advance of any work proposed. Did I get it?
Right, and do we need to say anything about the timing in this, or just let that go?
We'll work on the timing.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion approved.
Thank you,
everyone.
Joe, good job.
The second tree is a declining 28-inch EVA number of decline here for the third tree. Avery has done a report here. This one's much more cut and dry. It's quite dead. And Eve recommended it with any discussion.
the only thing I wanted to add is I realized I mentioned I spoke with one of our state entomologists over the last Friday, and I found out that in this case, and maybe a previous case, I stated mountain, I suggested it was mountain pine wood, I should have said western pine. Based on some of the evidence that was available,
Okay,
probably western pine wood. We learn something every day, and now we hopefully didn't confuse anybody if you're in the details.
The beetle corn may have been confused.
Yes. Anyhow, that's all I put.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
What are the little like deep called in the park?
that's called gray brown saprot, cryptocoris.
Really brown. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an indication after the dead.
Yeah, I would think, you know.
Is that exactly what this tree had out
They
there?
had it too, cryptocoris, and those were probably western. We could tell because of the blonding, so I didn't know that the western pine beetle lives a little bit more shallowly in the bark. And the woodpeckers can hear that, and that's why it's what I call the bark off of that. So the mountain, smaller than English trees, a little bit different.
So it makes the
You won't have that blonding, but that blonding was present on the screen.
blonding of the bark.
They call it blonding, yeah,
Okay,
it's in the bark, it's
sorry.
really light in color, yeah,
Very cool.
that's an indication of western.
So it looks like it's open the room. Yeah. Well. All concerned.
Did we comment on this street?
No, not, I don't disagree with what was found by Avery and his determinations.
I motion that. First Street, 462 South First Street, will be removed by the city.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
For the first we took an hour, that took 3 minutes.
We had to make up time. Well, we're one that, that'd be.
And I'm not trying to make it change anything, so don't take that as a criticism. Just fascinating. This is another civics lesson, right? Yeah.
Well, sadly, there's many a tree that is presented that is just a take down.
How many trees are at our city tree inventory these days?
700.
Couple thousand.
Yeah, it's amazing. Are they all numbered individually in a thing still? You know exactly what the number of that tree is in your data list.
Right.
But it's probably Joe did the Excel file for you or something. No. Sorry.
Okay, other business. Give your sister program for command and review, given the time and the absence of Patrick and Emily. I'm thinking maybe we should move this till next time. And let's feel about that.
Yeah. Right.
It is on the topic, those pages are on the topic of yeah, pages 30 to 37.
37, community goals.
Community involvement and stepping up the game of the urban forestry board. And thumbs it up. So one thing we can think about is how to implement something to speak to what Paul brought up. Our community member about insurance and how to plant trees, and Michael's great idea about, well, look at this, that this came through on the city a month ago. If you really want your property to be firewise and well planted, you could just model off of this.
The language we have in the defensible space ordinance for new construction. People who have existing construction could follow that as a lead if they wanted to, and I think that make them about as compliant as any insurance agency could want. So that was my idea. And I also told, it was Paul Bennett, by the way, so you know Paul. And I just told him if he has further concerns, we'd love to hear him at city council as well.
This is city council look at the type of trees, do they make any recommendation?
We did, we created a prohibited plant.
Prohibited, right? And what food trees and,
Blue spruce is on that list. These are new construction, not within 30 feet.
Okay.
Of any new structure. So there's more. And we put that list on a particular place in our code where if we need to add or remove from the list, it doesn't change the rest of the ordinance. So it was actually a 2-part process. One, create the list, and which we can modify at any time without changing the rest of the ordinance.
Nice.
So I'm sure staff came up with that because we're just a bunch of city councilors. We're not, maybe the mayor had something to do with it because it is in her purview of her personal experience, professional experience. But it's a great idea, and I think that again, I'm really I applaud us on what we did as a city. You might have saw it was on the front of the bulletin Monday last week. I think was the whole thing about sisters, and the mayor was there and other people on the front page talking about that. I think it's going to affect us in good ways down the road. we have to do as much as we can. We're part of the forest, right? Our canopy connects to the forest that's all around us. So we just need to do what we can in the future and accept the fact that we're in a high risk area and just keep moving forward with that. Do I like having 5 feet of gravel around my house? I'm not gonna like it when I do it to my own house because I have nice plants I put a lot of money and time into. They could be moved as well. Plants could be pulled up and moved 5 feet away. Still have as much beauty as anything else. So
Thanks for
You
mentioning.
look at some of the trees that are in between the curb and the sidewalk, and it's only, it's only about 3 or 4 feet. And you plant a tree there now, and then in 8 years, it's buckling up the sidewalk, or is there a limit, or is there a specific code that says how much space should be between the curb, the city curb and the sidewalk?
Not that I believe.
Okay. And some of them are pretty, these small houses, these traffic houses, that it's pretty narrow, and the trees are gonna live for a while, but there's the root growth and compaction from the concrete and the asphalt. I don't know the real ramifications of it, but I know a lot of the little trees don't make.
Well, it kind of brings me to one last point I wanted to make about the birch tree is that probably one of the significant things that occurred that made me susceptible to beetle attack was the damage to the root system edges. And I know, in this group, we discuss public trees, not private or private development. However, we might consider if we establish a certain tree protection zone around public trees that exist adjacent to private property, we might have in the future prevent this type of thing. If that damage occurred within what we call 6x root zone, so you take the diameter of the tree, you multiply it by different numbers. If you have work within that 3x root zone, 3 times the diameter of the tree, you have the potential to stabilize the tree. Out to 6, out to 12 is the recommended distance to kind of eliminate impacts of the tree. Sometimes that's not possible, but there's a whole write-up on that. Be considering public trees adjacent to private property. That's something to consider in the future that might help alleviate the situation.
that reminds me, can I ask another question? Is there a need now to consider beetle abatement things, actual policies to actually try and reduce the amount of beetles we have in our area, or possible prevention so it doesn't at least get any worse? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
There's potential to do that in reducing the amount of slash that's left on the ground during certain months of the year.
Okay.
Specifics we can sit down and talk about that, but overall,
I think I'm asking more for just, this is your guys' area. I'm not asking for myself, but because I will tell you that the reason we need you guys as volunteers is because we can't tackle every issue on our own. Right? You guys are the tree people, and this is your board. And if there's something that we should be doing or considering, it probably is going to come from you guys first, not from what I'm saying, but what you're thinking. And I just, like I said, I like to learn things, and I'm asking these questions just to find out what the answer is, not only for me to consider, but for you guys to consider. If there's, if we're having a beetle infestation and it's 8 times worse than it was 10 years ago, is there something we could be doing to stop that? If it's only 1% per year, maybe there's, we take smaller bites of the apple to try and abate somehow. That's just all I'm asking. And I don't know the answers again. I'm just throwing it out.
I think that, the tree management plan that exists does just that, which is giving a full inventory, understanding what we have, the age and health dynamics, and then maintenance recommendations so that what we have is healthy. I think that's the most cost-effective way to fight beetles, right? Is the pruning and making sure they're thriving as much as they can so that they're not susceptible and stressed. So I think we have that plan in place, and there might be more ways we can consider supporting our urban forest, but I think we have the plan, and the recommendations are great. We've been reading through that bit by bit and discussing it, and then our next task is to kind of break it into more actionable tasks that we delegate and set a timeline for, and so on and so forth. But I think that that's the most cost effective and also just the most effective way to address the forest health in general, whether it's beetles or other risks.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And then sometimes, and to your point, is sometimes a question comes out there and there are no big movements that need to be done. We already have a lot of it in place, and it's just a couple of small movements to highlight beetles. That's great. I'm not trying to give you more work than you need or anything like that. I'm just asking, like I said, I'd like to ask a couple of questions now and again, so I learn just a little bit more. About what people.
These invasions a lot come from the national forest and we don't have favor. I don't think kind of, but I 30 years I came through it and everything was dying. I'm coming over the mountain, western something, and I just couldn't believe it.
They're native beetles and they have very populations at
Right.
every time. There's but yeah, that is a good point. There's a pretty good little portion here in the urban portion and about detection.
Yeah, I mean, everything needs to be looked at every once in a while, right? So, thank you for.
And we have to set our
Thank you for that.
priorities too. What we want to talk about. It just that going on and that's what we're going through the.
Management.
Yeah, management plan.
This is-
Okay, what do we need to work on now and pick these 5 things or whatever it is.
This is exactly why city council really appreciates you guys. You guys are looking at it way closer than we are. And we're kind of different levels of policy, right? We're kind
Right.
of overreaching higher stuff.
Yeah.
And to get into the particulars, we need you guys. I don't have time, I have a full-time job to do this. I don't have time to get into every little tree thing. I don't know anything about beetles other than I know that they get into trees and kill them. So if you guys are looking at it, you guys feel comfortable, I feel comfortable. So thank you so much.
Oh,
I think the difficulty, especially with new development, is, you have a set of policies that's driven around a goal or multiple goals, using affordable housing, for instance, creating density, smaller lots, less setbacks, sometimes no setbacks, where you can have trees survive. And then you're mixing that with a multimodal policy where you want sidewalks and multi-use paths. And you only have so much right of way to work with. As soon as you start trying to save trees, things start conflicting. And really trying to ride that happy medium with development of, it would be great to have 12 feet around every tree in the public right of way, but you're not going to have a sidewalk. You're not going to meet ADA. There's challenges there.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Slow growth trees or something, not an aspen that takes off. But are there lists from Bend or Redmond of the trees that they recommend that the city plants on their right of way, in Bend or Redmond?
Absolutely. I would say our list is better.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's newer. It's had,
How do I access? Sure.
I can share that with the board members. It is in our development code.
Yep.
Under landscaping, I believe.
I'd like to see that just because don't put a big fast growing tree there, put a small bush, it's gonna grow slow and then it can live within that framework of what's there, the water and the compaction from that heat, whatever. So
Yep.
great, I'd like to see that.
but we wrestle with trying to save ponderosa pines all the time with development. And sometimes they're fine. And sometimes you look at them wrong, they die.
Yeah.
So they're very fickle tree, and we are right in their root systems. I mean, you have no choice other than to cut every tree in the right of way, which we want to try to keep some. And we have successes in town where trees have been able to habitate with a hard surface around them. I mean, gosh, pull into Camp Sherman's store. You got huge trees with asphalt all the way around them, up to the base, and somehow they survive.
West St. Helens, or not St. Helens, West. The one that's divided around the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even down here on Maple. Yep.
You read them already updated this last year, and this was pretty good.
Is it, okay, and that would help me.
All right, staff updates, any others?
Yes, so just status on approvals from last meeting. The dead ponderosa pine on East Tyee, they did leave approximately 20 feet of it standing as a habitat tree. And then, of course, the large dying ponderosa or dead ponderosa on the corner here of Locust and Cascade was successfully removed. A little bit of traffic control was necessary, but we got it out of there, or our arborist got it out of there.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're working with our landscapers on trying to fill the gap that it left behind on landscaping around that small little swale there, so it doesn't look so bare.
Try to get some trees grown in there without creating clear vision.
Right, that's the
with the other side.
thing about, yeah, vision. Or you just grow them up and then cut them all off, then like power lines.
Arbor Day's coming next year. Maybe we can, we're planting more trees every Arbor Day. So
Yeah, and they all look so healthy.
Yeah.
When I
So
drive
for-
by, I haven't walked by, but they all look like they're living in that,
I mean, with this hot, we're doing this, it's fingers crossed.
yeah,
But I don't think we had any mortality, so
which is amazing.
irrigation helps.
You're getting
For sure, yeah.
So good to get it ready beforehand.
Yep. So had a quick update on the Elm Street multi-use path. Central Electric, you remember they needed to remove trees to install power lines, new power lines down Elm Street that will actually cross the creek using our pedestrian bridge. And with that, those trees would have had to have been removed for the multi-use path, just with the limited amount of right of way. And they went ahead and took out 5 trees on the north side of the creek that were slated for removal, not only for the path, but just they're burying multiple 6-inch conduits down through there. So there's going to be significant root damage at that point. So for that project, we believe that's it for tree removal. We had the issue with the garage and they wanted, but that got settled. So those trees are going to remain. Yeah. So I think we're done with tree removal at that project.
Is that Fred's house?
One past Fred's. Yeah.
All right, are there board or any review of comments?
No.
I mean, I'll probably more just pick those.
Thank you. I love,
Good, you did a good job.
Your observations.
Appreciate it. There's nothing on here about my role here. And when I'm now I'm on the planning commission advisory role for the council, which is a new role starting. I'm the first one that's ever done it.
okay,
And we regularly have a place in our minutes. If you have any questions of council, some of them I can answer right away. Some of them might be bigger questions for the whole council for us to answer. If you have, if you don't, that's okay. But I would like to encourage you to definitely ask questions if you have some of council when your person is here, whether it's Cheryl or Gary, either one. We want you to feel like you have a valuable role in the whole city hierarchy. And basically, it's the council and then planning commission, and all the other boards fall right there just underneath us. Again, we appreciate your input. We do think about some of the ideas that Paul was talking about, hitting those happy mediums between affordable housing and protecting trees and sidewalks and drainage and parking. That's kind of our role, but we can't come to good decisions without your input. Because you guys are concentrating on the tree canopy, all the new programs that we have, I think it's so important what you guys are doing. And I see myself stepping down off of city council at some point and not getting reelected and doing more of what you're doing because I just love being involved too. So you might see me down the road on either a tree board or a, the PWAB or, other things like that. So, yeah, anyway.
But that's a good point. I don't know if it's something that we would want to formalize on the agenda, but when we're doing this part of the meeting, staff updates, board member comments, to specifically think about when we come to a meeting, do we have questions for our city council rep?
Yeah, planning commission does it earlier than that somewhere, but even before visitor communication. Every once in a while, I'll have a comment I want to make to planning commission, especially just thanking them on some future or past work that they have done. But I like to talk early at the planning commission because sometimes they have to make decisions on things that I don't need to be there for, that are land use decisions, and I actually have to leave the room. So I don't think that's the case with this body. So it can be later if you want it. I think you can insert it wherever you want, but the planning commission is early because if they're going to consider something that could possibly get appealed to our body, I can't be there and listen to it ahead of time. So half of our meetings with the planning commission, or half my meetings with the planning commission, I am there early. Nothing's going on, or no questions, and I bolt because I can't. We don't want to create a legal problem for me hearing something that comes before me.
Yeah, gotcha.
So that's just something to consider again. And I'm sure that Gary or Cheryl, either one of them, wouldn't mind seeing that on the agenda to answer your questions if you had.
No.
And they don't have to be about the forestry report. If you just have a general question about something that's going on, it's fine. So.
Does anybody have feedback about that particular point?
I don't have any feedback, no. Thank you for that. Oh, shoot.
So I think we can talk about it's time. And Patrick's here, Linda's here. And Cheryl's here about that.
You got half right now, right?
What's that?
You have half the board here.
Yeah,
Just enough.
just enough. All right. So
Thanks for having me.
yes, thanks.
Thanks for comment.
So just for
Right.
Thank you.
just for clarifying, you're looking at potentially a dedicated section for questions with the council rep.
Or we could say board member comments and questions for counselor rep.
Okay.
Just kind of a catch-all for general discussion about things going on that didn't make it to the agenda, but that we care about.
Of course.
That would
Yeah,
be great.
the council rep is a non-voting member, but still a member. Yeah,
Right.
we definitely have
And-
those conversations.
As Michael pointed out, a conduit to other things going on at city council level that,
May affect you down the road.
yeah, might be good to have some cross pollination.
Yeah, particularly like we were talking about with Paul, we're going to be crafting, and you guys are gonna be part of it, is the language for physical space of existing. Which has a lot more challenges because we have a lot of homes out there that still have shade roof. So
Yeah.
how do you get those people to come on board with the rest of them? It's hard because it costs money. And
Of course, yeah.
we don't want to just strong arm everybody doing it. We want them to be part of the process and part of the solution. And it's not everybody can afford to do that. So there's a lot of considerations down the road. We're going to have many discussions. It's much harder than to do the new rules for new construction. Existing construction has 10 times more things to think about. And so the defensible space standards for new construction took 9 months. So if it took 9 months for that, how long is it gonna take for the existing, the rest of town? It's gonna be tough.
Yeah,
We're gonna have some really tough conversations, and we're obviously gonna have to do a lot of public engagement with citizens because it impacts people a lot. It impacts every property in town. Anyway, thanks.
all right. Gonna adjourn the meeting on July 14th at 4:40 p.m. under the Urban Forestry Board. We'll see you next month. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Good job, everybody.